Our next speaker is from one of the industry's very important partners when it comes to the economics of dealing with natural disasters, the Asian Development Bank. Ms. Madeleine Varkay is a principal private sector development specialist at the ADB. She develops financial projects across Southeast Asia with both government, commercial banks, and insurance companies. Ms. Varkay has represented the ADB on several boards across regional financial and not-for-profit institutions. Most recently, she has initiated a public-private earthquake insurance pool in the Philippines together with PIRA and a working group of international reinsurance companies under the chairmanship of the Insurance Commission and the Department of Finance. To shed light on the ADB's disaster program, disaster pooling agreement, and models, ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Ms. Madeleine Varkay.
Good morning, and thank you very kindly to PIRA for having me here this morning. It's an honor, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to present the recent developments undertaken by ADB in the area of disaster risk financing. This is an area where ADB has been engaging with both governments and increasingly, and most importantly, I would say with the private sector since 2008. And we have been initiating a series of activities whereby we launch integrated disaster risk management programs which focus on disaster risk reduction, disaster risk management, as well as disaster risk financing. And why are we doing this? The reason being, increasingly there are incidences of black swans, the Thai flood being the most glaring example. We also are fully aware of the impact of earthquakes here in the region, working across Southeast Asia, and communicating with counterparts within ASEAN, within the ASEAN Insurance Council, specifically within the Andrews task force that has been structured on disaster risk financing. We have had several meetings whereby we have estimated the outfall of earthquakes here across Asia Pacific. But the issue is, while we have the estimates, there is still a question of how do we face the degree of uncertainty? How do we counter this uncertainty with quantifying and accessing data? Where do we access the data from? And how do we start modeling these risks? And this is the reason why we have been working in much closer coordination now with the Philippine Insurance and Reinsurers Association here in the Philippines to address these uncertainties and to begin quantifying them on a systematic basis. And so the part of the techniques that we undertake, not only here in the Philippines, but increasingly across projects in the Asia Pacific, which I will be detailing through the presentation, is first of all, the disaster loss adjustments. How do we systematically quantify the impact of specific natural disasters? And this is the reason why we have been engaging with risk modelers across the region, and specifically with Catalytics on their open platform risk model, but also coordinating very closely with the large reinsurance companies who of course have their own proprietary models, such as Munich Re, Swiss Re, Willis, as well as with the big reinsurance brokers such as Aon Benfield. We're also coordinating very closely with governments now on disaster risk management to integrate risk reduction into public investment programs, urban development, particularly at large municipality level. which is increasingly becoming a focus of our activities in the Southeast Asia region, environmental management, and of course social protection through mechanisms such as microinsurance, microhousing. We are also, of course, initiating activities, specific activities on disaster risk financing and strengthening risk governance across public and the private sectors, for instance, with respect to contingency planning at the government level as well as at the business level. With respect to specific projects, the way the ADB works is to develop these strategic plans, 3-year plans, country partnership plans, and country partnership strategies, which we've just completed here recently in the Philippines. And this then is a 5-year strategy, where we have extensive coordinations across government and as well as across the commercial sector. And we've just completed our country program strategy, where we have included several initiatives that we're currently working on jointly on these areas of disaster risk reduction, disaster risk management, and disaster risk financing. And one of the areas is the urban DRF mechanism, which is disaster risk financing, where we're piloting a program across 2 countries, both in the Philippines as well as Indonesia. We are undertaking the risk assessment and profiling of major urban areas. And this is a pilot initiative, but through this pilot we want to demonstrate to government the viability of doing DRF either at the national level or across major municipalities. There are solutions that we can customize, and I think that's the important word, that these are customized solutions. While we're inspired by programs that have been established in Mexico, in Turkey, in Taiwan, in Indonesia, what we really have to do is to develop a program that responds to the needs either of a specific country or of a large municipality. And that's what we're looking at through this urban DRF mechanism, where we're in the process of identifying major municipalities here in the Philippines as well as in Indonesia, where we can look at disaster risk financing options for these cities, raise awareness on disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management, and undertake the appropriate training and dissemination of information. Oops. Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to see if Now, once we have identified the cities, which we're in the process of doing, we will then assess which initiatives would best suit that particular municipality, whether it's the insurance of vital infrastructure, whether it's the development of an emergency liquidity program for the municipal level, whether it's social protection programs for households and small businesses, or whether it's a combination of these 3 areas. And that's where we're currently engaging with the Office of Civil Defense, also with the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, the international reinsurance governments, and with the Japanese Ministry of Finance, who are sponsoring this activity for us. We're also taking this information and disseminating this information and coordinating very closely with our colleagues in the ASEAN, as well as with the World Bank, in order to ensure that we have complementary activities and we're not duplicating initiatives, nor are we, frankly, contradicting each other. And so that's where we have been engaging very closely with our partners in the World Bank and within ASEAN. Here specifically in the Philippines, we're coordinating very closely with the World Bank on developing a disaster risk financing framework. I'm sure you're all aware of the financing that the World Bank has provided, the contingent credit facility that was drawn down last December. But they're also interested in working and collaborating with the ADB, together with the Department of Finance and together with the Insurance Commission, on establishing a sustainable long-term strategy on disaster risk financing for the country. And in this area, we're again coordinating very closely with the major departments here in the Philippines, and also integrating, and we need to coordinate much more closely with PIRA. So that will be the next step in our activities on DRF framework development. We've had 2 meetings so far, one last October and one most recently in June. And so we will be presenting jointly the strategic framework, hopefully by the end of this year, if not by the first quarter of 2013. Now, within this overall framework, and linking up also with the pilots that we're doing on the municipal level, at the municipal level in Indonesia and in the Philippines, we're working very closely on a public-private insurance pool facility with PIRA under the chairmanship of the insurance commissioner and very closely involving Madame Chong as well as the Department of Finance in a working group where we are also involving on a regular basis the major reinsurance companies to structure a earthquake insurance pool. Now, this is modeled on the existing earthquake insurance pools that have been structured for Turkey, for Taiwan, and also for Mexico and Indonesia most recently. And we're looking to enable, at this time, we're lacking data. And so we have undertaken, and we're in the process of undertaking, a survey of middle-class residential and SME property values. We're not including the value of land, we're simply including the value of property, and we're looking at the replacement value. We're coordinating very closely with the World Bank. We're undertaking a parallel activity focusing on the valuation of national assets. So the World Bank is looking at the major infrastructure, roads, bridges, airports. They're also looking at the major schools, hospitals that are presently uninsured or not sufficiently insured. And so ADB is doing a complementary activity for the SME residential and middle class property. Now, why are we doing that? This is a major area of exposure for the commercial banks. It's a major area of exposure for the insurance companies. And by structuring an insurance pool, we can allow for the ceding of this risk to the pool, which will then be almost fully reinsured internationally. There's a very strong level of interest by the international reinsurance companies in looking at Philippine risk and in adopting Philippine risk, or at least including Philippine risk in their overall portfolio. And so that's the reason why Swiss Re, Munich Re, Willis, and a couple of others recently have expressed interest in joining the working group to better assess with us the premium rates that we're going to be determining at the end of our survey. So essentially, from now until the end of November, we will be completing the survey results. We're looking at 3 major LGUs here in Metro Manila, Makati, Quezon City, as well as Parañaque. And we will be using this data to essentially develop an overall risk assessment for the municipality of Greater Metro Manila for National Capital Region, which in itself represents close to 35% of the national GDP. If an earthquake strikes the National Capital Region, it will have a disastrous impact on the economy. And so we need to have an appropriate assessment of the liabilities, which we can then offset from government's budget and allow government to dedicate its scarce public resources to the underserviced, and that is to the poorest segments of the community, of society. And so once we have that data, we'll be working together with Catalytics, the open platform risk modeler, on determining the risk exposures, and working very closely with PIRA as well as with the reinsurance companies on assessing the premium structures. And we should have all of that data ready for a presentation by early December. and we can make that data public and present it to a wider group of stakeholders by January for your feedback, and then continue structuring the pool, both in terms of the governance framework, the business plan, the investment plan, the reserve funding, and then determine the funding required from the ADB as well as from the private sector. We're looking at a mix of debt and equity to ensure the long-term sustainability of the earthquake pool. So that's going to keep us busy, actually, we're until December certainly, and into the next year. And if we move quickly enough, we can submit the project for consideration by ADB's board either by the end of 2013 or by early 2014. Now, my bosses are telling me that this is going to take longer, and they actually are encouraging me to take this to the board in 2015, and I said, no, that's much too late. We've got to move much faster, and we have to have something ready for consideration by latest 2014. So with your help and support, and with the encouragement of the industry and participation of the industry, we hope to have a solid project structure ready by mid-2013, actually, which we can then also bring to the attention of the wider investment community. There are a number of institutional investors that have also expressed interest in this pool, and so why not make it part of a wider institutional and investor roadshow. This is not the sole area of activity of the ADB. As mentioned earlier, we're undertaking pilot projects in several other countries here in ASEAN. We're mirroring the activity of the municipal disaster risk management and disaster risk financing that I mentioned earlier in Vietnam. And we have just agreed with the government of Vietnam on initiating both an integrated disaster risk management with them in their major municipalities. And so we will be able to present some results coming out of this technical assistance by mid-year next year as well. We have several types of financing modalities that we're also currently exploring within ADB to make it easier for governments to access financing to reduce disaster risk and to address disaster risk on an ex-ante basis, as opposed to looking at financing modalities post-disaster and after the event. And one of these financing modalities is the contingent credit program, whereby we could allocate a pre-agreed amount on a contingent credit facility basis with usually the Department of Finance, and bring it as part of an overall budget support program. So this is a complementary activity that we would be doing in addition to the public-private partnership insurance and reinsurance pools that we're initiating here in the Philippines, and in addition to the municipal financing activity that we're undertaking in Indonesia as well as Vietnam. Well, one of the questions that we get increasingly as well, you're doing work with the major governments, you're putting in place this contingent credit facility to provide budget support in the case of a catastrophe. You're working with the middle class, you're working with SME property owners, but what are you doing for the poor? And in this respect, we've got several targeted programs and projects that we're dedicating exclusively to the poorer segments of society through our microinsurance programs. And this microinsurance program in the Philippines is also coming as a result of very productive work that we have undertaken in the area of microfinance. And we have piloted a program with the German Society for International Cooperation, GIZ, in the area of microinsurance. It has been a successful program, and we're now looking to expand the focus across the country and move it from a pilot to a much larger coverage in a next phase. We've received additional funding for this program, and so we will be initiating this next stage, as I say, at a national level in 2013. So we've got several projects that are all complementing each other taking place in 2013, and each project will reinforce the other, and we can also disseminate information and share knowledge, which I think will eliminate the risk across these projects. Now, the other question we get is, well, you're focusing on earthquake and you're spending a great deal of energy on minimizing the risks related to earthquake, but what are you doing about flooding? A major flood has hit Thailand. It's caught everyone off guard, including, frankly speaking, the ADB. It's resulted in losses of $45 billion, disrupted supply chains the world over. What are you doing? And we have reacted very quickly to this, and in January of this year, we had a major forum which involved the major donors, government, as well as brought in experts, frankly, on disaster flood management from Australia. You know what the floods have been like recently in Australia, Korea, Japan, the Netherlands, who of course have expertise and technology as well as insurance on managing floods, as well as the US, where again, disastrous floods have been well documented recently. And we have brought together these experts specifically from the engineering field, technology, risk modeling field, as well as the financial and insurance, including reinsurance sector, on how to address flood risks across the region. And we have developed a master plan, which you can find on this very short website. Apologies for that. I don't know why ADB has these 3-sentence websites, but there it is, and you can click on that, and I guarantee the site will pop up. So it is actually of interest to see how these various support mechanisms can work together and reinforce each other, again, on disaster risk reduction using latest technology, including flood risk, as well as engineering structural issues that can be brought as a response mechanism. All of this on an ex-ante basis. And so that's the operative word increasingly now in ADB. What do we do on an ex-ante basis? How do we address these risks early on? How do we start risk-proofing our own projects in ADB across the Asia-Pacific region? And how do we assist the private sector and governments to risk-proof projects and work together to reduce these risks? Now, one of the most exposed areas, of course, is the greater Mekong subregion and the Mekong River Delta. And there, too, we're initiating flood risk management activities with the poorer economies of Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And again, we're facing disasters not only related to floods, but also to drought events. And so how to mitigate these risks, what type of financing mechanisms, as well as what type of projects do we develop as a development institution to address the prevalence and the increasing frequency of both extreme events. And so that's increasingly part of our program. And as you can see, we're doing this to both minimize the risks to agricultural productivity, as well as to agricultural related incomes. There are several other financing and insurance mechanisms that we're looking at there with respect to agricultural indexing, but more on that later. And also in terms of how to preserve the existing rural roads or how to strengthen the existing rural roads and canals. But increasingly how to integrate this into appropriate planning, not only at the national government level, but increasingly at the decentralized municipal level. And what type of tools to provide to decision makers at the equivalent of the LGU level. And of course, how to minimize disruption of business activities and agricultural activities through better contingency planning. And so that brings me to the end of the presentation. I would be very pleased to answer any of your questions on any of these programs. And I would also like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks once again to PIRA and to the members of PIRA who first approached us actually at the ASEAN Insurance Council meeting in 2010 that was held here, the 36th ASEAN Insurance Council meeting that was held here in Manila. And we had a small focus group meeting at the Andrews Task Force on Disaster Risk Financing with a very impassioned speech by Mr. Teddy Hamsala. And he looked at us and looked at ADB specifically and said, well, what's ADB doing? We looked at each other sheepishly and we said, well, what do you want us to do? And they said, well, get started. And so thanks to that meeting and thanks to pressure from PIRA, we are now initiating this earthquake disaster insurance pool and look forward to having very specific outputs for you by December, which we would like to present to you, and then presenting the project specifications to you by mid-year next year. Thank you.